Seth and Cain, their sons' name choices. Did you ever think about that? They just happen to be so similar. Interesting. Hi everyone, welcome to Learning God's Guidance with Audrey here. Hello. I'm on chapter 4 of Genesis. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Make sure you subscribe. This is where I'm reading the Bible for the first time, and I'm taking you along the journey with me of what I get from it. And right now we're on Genesis chapter 4 and 5 is what I'm going to talk about. And I'm going off memory here because I don't have the other phone and the app in front of me. So let's see if I got this right. Okay. All right. So basically what happens in these two chapters is Cain and Abel are born from Adam and Eve, right? And they're brothers. And Cain gives an offering to God of a fruit from the ground because he works the ground and gives them an offering of fruit. And Abel gives so Abel gives meat, right? Some form of animal. I can't remember what animal. But and God's pleased with Abel but not with Cain for whatever reason. It doesn't say, and I wonder why. But yeah, that had me thinking, I wonder, what did God not like about Cain's offering? But regardless, Cain was jealous of how God, reacted to Abel's offering over his offering, and so he ended up killing his own brother. Like, what? Why? Right? So he ends up killing his own brother, and God already knew because he could hear the cries of Abel through the ground, right? And so he's like, what have you done? And then Cain fesses up and says, I killed him. And he's like, well, you're going to be punished for this. And his punishment was to send him to outside of Eden into a place called, I believe it's called Nod, if I got that right. And so he sends him outside and then says you're going to be sweating to work the ground. Like, he's going to make it even more harder for you to basically live. And Cain's like, well, this punishment is crazy. Like, it's a lot. Like, anyone who sees me is just going to surely kill me. And he's like, and God's like, no one shall ever should kill you, for if they do, they'll have sevenfold punishment than you're having. Right. So this had me thinking about a question I always had as a kid. I never understood the death penalty or war for this very reason, because I feel like it's very, very hypocritical. And even though it might, for the people who lose somebody, feel very deserving, well, they took someone's life, so they deserve not to have a life, right? So that's why they even offer the death penalty, and people just retaliate with war, is because of their vengeance, right? But God is saying here, no, I'm not gonna do what I'm telling you not to do and what I'm so mad at you for, which was killing your brother. I'm not gonna do that same thing that you did to him. I'm not gonna let that happen to you, even though I'm so mad, even though you might deserve it and it's justified and all the things. I'm still not gonna give you that because I love my people and I'm not gonna kill people, right? So or I'm not going to have other people kill you. So, and if they do, they will be punished. So anyway, that kind of answered some of I felt like, I don't know. It reminded me of my childhood and questions I had as a kid. Why do we do that? Anyway, as nations, as, the system, all the stuff. So okay, moving on. So then he goes and he lives in Nod, and then he has a family, and he has a son named Enoch. Sorry. Cain has a son named Enoch. And initially I'm like, is that the Enoch that I read about later? Because I have read some of Genesis throughout the year, but not a deep dive like this as intense as I'm doing now. So I'm like, I wonder if that's the Enoch that they talk about later. But come to find out, it's not. So then So he has a son named Enoch, but then Adam and Eve are like, well, we don't have Abel anymore, and Cain is like out of our city, right? I wonder how far it was. I'm imagining, like, how far is Eden from Nod? Like, did he just like throw him on the other side of the world? Like, I don't know. Anyway, and then so Adam and Eve are like, let's have another son. So then they have Seth, and then Seth has a son named Enoch. I find that kind of like, so, like, what? Like, so technically Seth and Cain are brothers, but because Cain is in a faraway place, makes me wonder, like, did they ever meet? Did they ever know each other? And they just happened to name their sons such similar sounding names, right? Enoch and Enoch. That had my wheels spinning, kind of like, wow, that's fascinating. So anyway, and then chapter 4, I'm trying to remember after that. I think that was the end of chapter 4, around he has a son. Okay, chapter 5, let's move on to chapter 5. I'm going off memory, guys, so bear with me. I wish I had the other phone with me right now. My son is right here sleeping, but yeah. Okay, so chapter 5, it's the generations of Adam and Eve. So they go through the generations, right? And it's kind of, as you're reading, I'm finding like this part is like, oh, okay, just kind of fact based on this person died, this person lived this amount of years, and then they died, and then they had a son named so and so, and then they died, and then they had a son named, and there's a pattern that reminds me of like the beginning of Genesis, like the first chapter of Genesis, right? The one he talks about, like the pattern of like there was evening and morning the first day, and God saw that it was good, and God saw that it was good. And in this chapter, in chapter 5, there's a similar pattern of like, we're going through, I'm just going to tell you how many years they lived and then they died, and they had this son, and then how many years they lived and died. But then when they get to Jared, ends up having a son named Enoch. And when they get to and God said, and then he says in there, like, for he is not, for God took him. And there was no like, and then he died or any of that. It was the pattern interrupt, basically. Huge pattern interrupt. And it had my wheels spinning. And it mentioned how, like, after Enoch had his son, then he walked with God. And all the other ones doesn't say that they walked with God. I think the assumption is that they just walked with God. But when it got to Enoch, there's definitely a pattern interrupt here about, okay, he walked with God, for he was not, and then God took him. And I'm like, he was not what? Like, part of my brain's like, he was not what? And he took him where? Right? And then it just moves on to keep going down the list. And I thought, well, I wonder what that's all about. I'm sure there's something there. But anyway, that's what I got so far from chapters 4 and 5 of Genesis. It has my mind spinning with curiosity, and I'm just enjoying this process. If you like this channel, make sure you like it, share it, and subscribe. And I am going to be moving on into the next chapter. And so, yeah, share this with a friend. And thanks for watching. And remember, I'm new to the Bible, so be kind in the comments. I'm a baby at learning this stuff, and I'm just pulling you along for the ride. And I hope it serves you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on your interpretation of what you got out of this. Okay? All right. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.